Hi, my name's Lee Lickorish. I'm a health coach. I've been a coach now for the last 6 years. And a holistic health coach is kind of it's an interesting it's certainly an interesting subject and an interesting thing to be into, because health is a huge subject. It's such a broad subject, and we've all got into this idea of looking for a fix to get us healthy. We call it the pill for the ill. We're all looking for this one thing that can satisfy our health needs, and it just doesn't actually exist. We can find certain products to help us along, but and we'll get an effect, we'll get a reaction within ourselves, but that doesn't actually fix it. The only thing that fixes it is to hit our health regime from multiple perspectives. So just to try and get an overview of it, and something that really made sense to me, was the idea of the self, the I, being in control of a civilization. So we're in control of a country. We're the leader of a country, and within the country there's the towns and cities that each town and each city does a certain job. And so one will do waste disposal, and the other one will do processing, the other one will do manufacturing, the other one will, and you kind of get the idea. And all of these different communities, it is our job to look after these. And we can either be a benevolent ruler or we can be a tyrant. Now, if we're a benevolent ruler, we make sure that all of the supply chains to the towns are clear and smooth running, and we give them everything they need. We give them the rest. We don't work them too hard. We make sure everyone gets everything it needs, enough food, enough water, enough supplies to do the job that they need to do. Or we're a tyrant. We work them hard. We work them as slaves. We give them minimal food. We give them poor quality food. We give them lots of things like alcohol and drugs that runs rampant, and what happens is you get discord within the communities. And so looking at the body as that community, and we're in charge of that, what type of ruler are we? Are we a benevolent ruler, or are we a tyrant? And a lot of the times, if you're really kind of honest with the self, we can be quite tyrannical in the fact that we're not looking after our people. We're not looking after those. We're breaking the supply chain. We're not helping. We're consuming goods, or giving our people goods that are doing them damage and creating internal conflicts within our bodies. So first thing first is really about the awareness of that, and discovering where we're at, and then owning it. Speaking, over the period of time, I spoke with a lot of people, and it's a really difficult, from my own experience as well, is really difficult to own your stuff. And if the only thing with that, and if you can't sort of get into a place where you own your stuff and admit, okay, yeah, I'm like really screwing up, you can't change what you don't own. So once you kind of can own that, you can start the change. And then it as well, it's the idea of that we're the society, the way we live in this society, we're in this survival mode, and we're in it, and we always think somebody else is in it. But the truth of the matter is, we're all in this mode, just because of our way of life, and we think it's normal, but in actual fact, it's not. We've just been fooled in one way, to think this is the normal thing, what's happening. I mean, you can only have a look at social media at the minute, and you've only got to say one wrong word and everyone's up in arms, you know, and that stress, that's like real stress, and that stress translates into the body. And our trauma within ourselves, it gets stored within our bodies. And there's there's a connection between our trauma, our food, and how we feel, our state of being. A massive connection there. And once we understand there is a real connection there, we can start to do something about it. So this is a thing about sort of discovering where you're at, because our past experiences are having an effect on the food we eat and our behavior. Now, what kind of happens is that we have an experience, let's say a traumatic experience somewhere along the line, and our body has a reaction to that, and it kicks off endorphins, whether it's a good thing or not. You know, if it's a traumatic experience, it's not a good thing. However, it's such a chemicalized hit that our body actually craves that hit again, because it's such a stimulation. And what can happen is we can create that stimulation from a memory. Now, just as a for instance, when this crazy thing happened, 9/11, and those planes hit the towers, food intolerance for wheat went up about 1,500%. And the reason for that was that in America, most people, when them planes hit, were eating their breakfast, and most people were eating wheat. So intolerance to wheat went sky high. So that link there shows you that the trauma, every time someone has a trauma, they go for the wheat products, and which causes that kind of memory, that stored memory, that stored trauma, that effect within the body. You know, so there's a massive link there to that. And then we have a look at corporate manipulation into the foods that we have. So we're psychologically pushed to eat certain products. Our governments subsidize certain products, and if we look at that, these products, they're not good for us. I mean, they don't subsidize fruits and vegetables. They subsidize meat, dairy, sugar, all of these products that are high in carbs, high in fat. They're the ones that are not the fruits and the vegetables, which is, you'd think it'd be that they were subsidizing the fruits and the vegetables, but that's another story. So awareness of corporate manipulation is a really sort of strong factor into the choices people make. So we've got a couple of choices. We can either sort of eat to live and eat to thrive, or we can eat to die. And that's the difference between eating acidic food and alkaline food. If we eat the acidic food, what it was doing, it was creating an environment for chaos. We're creating an environment for inflammation. We're creating an environment for things to start breaking down. Once we do that, and the beauty of this is, the body is amazing, because we can turn it around. Once we have the awareness of this, we can turn it around really quickly, and the body will change very, very quickly and adapt. But here's the problem, is that we can do this and we can change it quickly, but then we get that crash, we get that yo-yo effect. So what happens is we go on these, like, you could say, let's call it a diet. We find a diet and say, yeah, we're going to go for this, and we'll do it for a bit, and we'll do it for a bit, and we'll do it for a bit, and all of a sudden we fall off the wagon. And then we have this like yo-yo effect and go back to where we was. And then after a while, we realize that we've fallen off the wagon. Then we go back on another diet or another scheme. And then we go back to, and sometimes we end up worse than where we were. So we go back and forth. And I had a client who was doing this, and each time he went back, he actually got heavier and heavier and heavier, up until the point his knees give way because of the weight of him was so intense. And he'd been yo-yoing for years. And what that was is the diet, or every time this person went onto the diet or went onto the regime or went onto the scheme, and he tried loads and loads and loads, it was too severe. It was just too severe for the body. And one of the things is to be gentle with itself. That's a really important thing, is to literally transition into these things really steadily, really slowly. And it takes longer. It does take longer, and the results take longer. But it's like getting fit. You know, if you go, let's just say you go for a walk, and you know you're pretty unfit. You know you're unfit, but you go for a walk, and every day you go for a walk, and every day you go for a walk, and after a period of time, after a period of 3 months, you actually realize all of a sudden this is, wow, where I was like out of breath from there to there, now I can pretty almost run it. And you do it without realizing it, but it's just about that consistency. That's a real key, is that just keep going, do it very, very slowly. Timing is another thing as well. It is, we get into patterns, and everything we do, we sort of fall into these patterns. And one of the biggest things is to disrupt the patterns. Once we start to disrupt these patterns, and there's many ways to do it, but once we start to disrupt these patterns, then we can see what they are. We can realize, wow, that was a pattern, and I've just changed it. One of the really good ways to disrupt like an eating pattern is intermittent fasting, because it's not so rigid. You can play around with it. You can, and the idea of intermittent fasting is to have as long a break as you can before you go to bed, and then so you then go to sleep and get up in the morning and leave your breakfast. Don't have breakfast for as long as you possibly can, and don't go too far. You know, just add an hour on, and the next day add another 10 minutes, and the next day another 10 minutes. And what happens is over the period of time, and don't do it for too long, and this is a thing, is you're breaking the patterns. And as the time lengthens, the body responses start to change. And it's one of the quickest ways to get in them pattern breakers and change the patterns of eating. And the benefits from there is really high. And the response of the body is really high as well. So if you really sort of looking at getting healthy quick or losing weight quick, one of those ways is to do the intermittent fasting and not being so rigid and hard. So if you wake up in the morning and go, oh, I need breakfast, then have breakfast. And then do it the next day. There's no, you haven't sort of these things. If I don't do this, it's not going to work. It will work just fine. But you just got to keep going and then be gentle with the self. And the things like having the right types of breakfast is really important. You know, if you're going to have a breakfast, and when you eat, have the right types of food. Lowering on the carbs is a great idea, but making sure when you do have carbs, they're not empty carbs. They're not like breads and pastas. You know, you want carbohydrates, what we call complex carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates, broccoli's got carbohydrates. That's a complex carb. And the body will go, yum, because what you're doing is sustaining you. When you put in carbs in, you're giving the body something to grab on hold of and utilize properly. Fruits and vegetables, awesome. You know, it is, once again, if you're, all of these things, especially the organic ones, especially organic vegetables, one of the main things is the bacteria, the gut. And if you can fix the gut and give the gut what it needs, then the rest of it will start to fall into play. The gut is like the cooking pot, you know, it's the cauldron. And everything gets cooked into the cauldron and then dispersed. Now, if that's not working well, and you've got things like leaky gut, which a lot of people have from the oils that are in the foods, into a lot of the foods, it creates leaky gut. It creates a lot of issues. So there's a few baddies, and in a few minutes I'm going to sort of outline just two or three of the baddest of the baddies, you know, and these are the things you kind of want to keep an eye on and stay away from. But I'll get to that in a moment. Another thing as well to help on the road to health is find a friend, someone you can confide in, and you know what they say is a problem shared is a problem halved, and it's true. I mean, if you can sort of share your health ills, and if you've got someone to share with, if not, get a coach, you know. And this is what it's about. It is about this communication between a person and two people, and having that person keep you accountable for what you say you're going to do. And there's nothing more, there's accountability is one of the strongest things, motivators for us to keep us going in the right direction. And here's the thing is, we're within the age of information. And within this age, knowledge is secondary, because we all know how to do it. No one needs to tell us how to do something. We all know it. It's there. It's the results that really count. And it's actually being honest and is looking at the self and saying, have I achieved, I know how to do it, but how am I achieving those results? Am I really achieving the results that I want? Because that's where it is. It's not as if you know it and not, and if the answer is no, then you got to do something different. Because could keep repeating the same thing and expecting different results, it isn't, you know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for anybody. So that's another thing is like discovering where you're at and owning it and saying, this isn't working for me. Let me find something that works. And I'll come to the baddest of the baddies, and these are the things to really sort of be aware of and, you know, stay away from as much as you can. First thing, number one, the thing that does not metabolize within the body is oils. I'm going to cut it out. The oils that hydrogenated oils, which are you kind of your rapeseed oils, stay away from rapeseed oil. That is a very, very toxic product. I mean, have you seen dogs after they run through a rapeseed field? They get all sore eyes and everything else. If you get rapeseed oil and put it on a portion of your skin and leave it there, the skin will start to break down. Literally, it will start to burn the skin. It is not a good thing. These oils are one of the worst things you can put in your body because the body can't metabolize them. And what happens with things that the body can't metabolize is because the body doesn't know what to do with it, it creates fat and locks it in fat because it doesn't know what to do with them. Alcohol, second. Alcohol is a really interesting product on how the body deals with it, because if you eat and have sugary products and alcohol at the same time, which many of us do, what happens is alcohol is that toxic to the body, it shuts down all of the functions to the liver. And because it shuts down, you get a backup of all of the things with all the different foods and everything else has to stop. All that, you know, that processing of the food has to stop to literally deal with the alcohol. So there's a real issue there with that. So I'm not saying no alcohol at all. All I'm saying is be mindful of what you're consuming with your alcohol, the type of alcohol it is, and it's about upping the game as well. I mean, if you're going to consume something that's quite dodgy, is if like whether it's sweet or whether it's alcohol, make sure it's the good stuff. Make sure it's not got any chemicals in it. You know, if you're going to have beer, make sure you, for instance, if you have a German beer comes under the Puritan laws. So they have like literally 3 ingredients. That's all that by law, that's all they're allowed to put into it. There is no chemicals in there. It's as clean as a whistle. So if you're going to have a beer, have a German beer, you know, have something that's clean. If you're going to have juices, make sure there's no, there's no artificial sweetness in there. That's a real biggie to the mind. If you're going to have sweet stuff, have sweet stuff that's not going to spike you too much. You know, honey's really good. It's a natural product. Have a good quality honey. If you're totally vegan, then I wouldn't suggest agave syrup, and it's far too processed and it causes lots of issues there with sugar spikes and everything else. But have like a maple syrup or something like that. You know, so it's upping the quality, and no one's saying stay away from all this stuff. It's like replace it with the good stuff, and then that way you're giving the body what it needs. Have plenty of fruits on hand. So if you fancy something sweet, pop in a grape, and the body will love it. Once you start giving the body what it needs and giving it the sugars it needs, the craving is less. And then this is the thing, is it's all about craving. We get them munchies, don't we, you know? And providing we can satisfy certain needs within the bodily needs, it makes it a lot easier. Wheat products. I want to tell you a little story. In fact, there was 2 companies that did this, and the missionaries went, and I can't remember the study, but missionaries went out into a place where there had been no studies done with natives, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the. In fact, I'm not pretty sure at all. There was a study done, and basically what happens was they tested it was a medical study, and they tested the natives there across the board, and they'd been there a year or so, and then they tested them again, exactly the same ones, and what they found out was that things like schizophrenia had increased substantially since the last time they test, and they actually worked out that because they'd been trading with the natives there, it was the wheat products that they were giving them that created a lot of the things like schizophrenia and a lot of the mental health problems that arose, you know, by a huge percentage. And so they wrote the study up and they published their study, and there was 2 in the UK. This is as well. There was 2 organisations, two sort of institutions that picked this up and said that can't be right. That actually we're going to try it, and they controlled these. You could call them a mental hospital, where they controlled the food and the drink of all the patients. And so what they both did was stopped all wheat products across the board within the hospitals. And within 2 months, everybody's symptoms literally disappeared. They just like were gone. And they then added the wheat products back in again, and all the symptoms came back. And that happened to 2 hospitals. And then it was all squashed down. But I mean, it's really interesting that within wheat, you get the gluten within the wheat, and the molecule within the gluten is, when you look at the molecule and you look at cocaine, they're very, very similar in their structure, and they both affect the same part of the brain. So we get a real hit off wheat products, and this is why it's quite addictive as well. And this is not from me. This is from this is from literally a brain doctor who studies, and he studies people's brains. He does a lot of brain scans, and he's shown how it affects people's brains. So it's really interesting that these things that we take as everyday sort of normal things, and we say, well, we've eaten bread for thousands of years. No, we haven't. We've eaten certain types and certain grains for thousands of years, but the stuff we have now is a difference between a cow and a pig. It's a huge difference. The stuff we've got now is being created in a lab, and the gluten that's within the bread today, the gluten that's within the thing, is 4 times higher than what our grandmothers had. So it's a huge difference. So it not only affects the brain, it weakens the gut. So once you start sort of seeing this and looking at and not taking these products out altogether, but just upping the game, finding the heirloom products, finding the good quality breads, finding the good quality sweeteners, lowering the alcohol, but making sure when we do have it, it's really good quality. And if we're meat eaters, is really important, and is going to a grass-fed meat as opposed to bean-fed, which a lot of them soy-fed. And the difference between that is omega-3 or omega-6. Omega-6 for the body is really sort of poor, and it's not needed at all. Omega-3 is really needed. Now, if you're a meat eater, if you're having grass-fed meat, you're getting good omega-3s in there. If you're having normal meat from Sainsbury's or whatever, you've got full of omega-6 in there. You're not doing the self any favors. And if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, animal fat is the ones to stay away from. No cheese, no butter, just literally stay away from the meat, because that's the thing that's not doing a person any good at all.